want you to make sure that you can see the screen here because I am so excited to have Freddie Dogtrim here with us this evening. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her as she makes her way and prepares to motivate and entertain us and inspire us. I met Freddie a while ago, and when I heard the words female ice road trucker, I went, now that's my kind of lady. I like that. Being a ranch girl, I thought it's nice to see another rough and tumble girl out there. So I heard all about her, and then I met her, and I saw how petite she is, and I'm like, well, you don't look like an ice road trucker. Totally not what I have in my head. But she's always believed that people and relationships are critical elements in building a strong community. So this evening, Freddie is going to encourage us to look at our lives and our relationships through different eyes. Freddie is a professional speaker, a storyteller and facilitator, and I have to tell you, an award-winning Toastmaster. She regularly speaks to motivate, to encourage, and to educate a wide variety of audiences. Her message of encouragement has gone far and wide, and this evening she will share with us some of these stories and her adventures. Freddie's varied background includes being a successful junior equestrian and rodeo participant, again, near and dear to my heart, a recruiter in the Beaufort Sea oil patch, and she has also sold goldfish above the Arctic Circle. I don't know what this lady has not done, but if you can think of it, she's done it. Her Arctic adventures, including being one of Canada's first female ice road truckers, give her a wide range of true stories based on her experiences that will entrance and entertain you. So please enjoy this evening's presentation of Rock Stars of the Arctic and help me welcome Freddie to the stage.
How many of you have watched Ice Road Truckers on TV? Isn't that exciting? I mean, you just never know from day to day, are they going to fall through the ice? Are they going to break down? Are the hills going to be too steep? And is Lisa going to be able to chain up her outside doilies? You know, I was privileged to be one of Canada's first female ice road truckers, and sadly, that was before television. You know, I think to myself, you know, I could have been Lisa. I could have been a star. But instead, it was just a job. And I have to say that although it was a really great job, my experiences do not parallel the television program. You know, years ago when I was a career development practitioner, I used to tell people that if they decided that they wanted to be a lawyer, don't watch LA Law for your inspiration. And tonight I say to you, if you want to be an ice road trucker, don't watch Ice Road Truckers or Dangerous Highways as your inspiration. I have to confess that it was probably one of the most boring jobs that I ever had, for most of the time. So where did I drive? I got to drive above the Arctic Circle. I was in the Northwest Territories on the Mackenzie River Ice Highway. I drove from Inuvik north, and I would drive up into the Beaufort Sea, and it was exciting. I loved the ice, and I loved the Arctic. The ice was different colors. It was blue and green and purple. And you could tell if you were on freshwater ice, which was the river, or if you were driving out on the ocean. Because as soon as you made that transition from driving up the river and onto the saltwater ice, it felt different. Have you ever been driving down the highway and just by the seat of your pants, all of a sudden your car feels different? You know, because you're on a different type of road? That's what it was like in the vehicle that I was driving. And when you moved from the fresh water to the salt water, it was more like driving on a waterbed. Because all of a sudden the ice would start to move and to undulate. Now, I've never driven down south around Yellowknife where Ice Road Truckers is filmed on the lakes. That is pretty dangerous. But instead, I was driving on the ocean. We have about 15 feet of ice underneath us, thankfully, because the unit that I was driving was a heavy hauler. And this vehicle was really, really an amazing vehicle. It doesn't look big in the picture, but those wheels are taller than me. You could put 10 men in parkas in the cab. It was huge. And my usual load was 25 to 30,000 pounds of explosives. So it was one of those jobs where you hope you didn't do a bang-up job. And you really hope that you didn't have a blast at work. You just kind of hope that you got safely from point A to point B. Well, what was kind of fun about this vehicle is that you could take a look at it and it's not streamlined. This is not a high-speed vehicle. The fastest it would go was about 40 miles an hour. Hour after hour after hour. Because oftentimes I'd be going 400, 500 miles up the river and out into the ocean. Now think about this, there's no cell phone, couldn't phone my friends, couldn't Facebook. There was no radio telephone because I was line of sight and we were on the other side of the land. There was no satellite phones because they hadn't been invented yet. And so as soon as I got out of sight, around the first bend in the river, I was completely alone, completely cut off, all by myself, out in the wilderness. It was an awesome job. I loved it. Sometimes I got the chance to help out at the camps, and we would move the camps. That's a big gen unit. And it was just kind of fun, hauling the explosives and hauling diesel oil and, doing some different things. I got to see some really cool stuff. I'll just step back a little bit so over here on the right you can see. This is the Mackenzie River, one of the small channels where the barges are frozen in. If they didn't get out by the beginning of September, they were there for the entire winter because the ice started to freeze. The ice road is open in the winter, and the winter is when it is dark. I had the most wonderful, wonderful vista of the sky. Blue velvet with the little stars in it. And the northern lights would just shine and dance with every color. And the snow was so white that you could see the color of the northern lights reflected in the snow. It was beautiful, absolutely incredible. Now, since moving down to southern Alberta, I've seen the northern lights a couple of times, but certainly not like they see them in the high Arctic. This is sort of the end of the road for some of my trips. I would get to where there was a drill platform and offload my explosives, turn around, and come back. It's kind of fun because sometimes you get to see some amazing sights. This is the harbor in Tuktoyaktuk with the couple of ships frozen in it. And again, if they didn't get out, they were there. I think it's kind of ironic, that the Franklin expedition has been in the news the last couple of weeks because these ships would spend the entire winter frozen into the harbor. This is up at Tuktoyaktuk. This little ship was used by the early missionaries and used to go up and down along the coast. It's called Our Lady of Lourdes. And it's on a static display, and there's more and more tourists going up there now. But when you take a look very closely, I don't know if you can see, but what they do is they use it as a drying rack. And here we have a muskox hide and a polar bear hide up there drying where the dogs and the animals can't get them. It's great to use your tourist attractions in very practical ways. I got the chance to visit some communities that had real dog teams. These were not pets, these were working dogs, and it was amazing what these dogs could do. And I was chatting with a gentleman one time and I said, so I see you've got a snow machine outside of your cabin, but you've got your dogs staked out by the lake. I said, what gives? Well, he says, the snow machine is really fast and it'll get me out on my trap line or hunting and I can get back pretty quick. But if I ever run into trouble, if the weather comes in or something, he says, I can't eat my snow machine. And I thought, isn't that interesting how technology and the changes of technology could potentially mean risk of life. Another dog team going and just having some fun with the ice. Now, I had the opportunity to make many, many trips up the ice road, and for the most part, they were pretty standard. I spent hours and hours with my thoughts. Good thing I enjoyed my own company, and would take the opportunity to look around And I would see the little foxes and the owls and the ptarmigan. It was really, really interesting. Every once in a while, a big Arctic wolf would come loping across the ice road in front of you. But it was very unusual that you would ever see another vehicle or another human being. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm a girl. And I like my coffee. And so I'd take about a gallon of coffee with me in the heavy hauler, and I'd set off. Well, you know, on the ice road, there is not a 7-Eleven, there is not a McDonald's, there's not a Tim Hortons, for gosh sakes. And so when the call of nature calls, you have to do what you have to do. And it would never fail. I would drive for hours. Nothing in the sky, nothing in the road. And I figure, okay, here's my opportunity. I'm on fidget. So I'd stop the unit, get out, and of course you dress in layers, right? Parka up, snow pants down, sweater up, up and down, up and down, up and down. You finally get ready to do what you need to do. A helicopter would fly over. The Aklavik taxi would come roaring by. It never failed. And so I sort of developed this aversion to drinking coffee when I was traveling. I remember one particular trip. It was one of the ones up into the Beaufort, and it was one of those stellar, stunning January nights. Crystal clear, cold, about 48 below, perfect temperature for traveling, because you knew that the ice was going to be pretty solid. And I'm driving along, and it was beautiful. It was black, just a little sliver of a moon just coming up over the edge of the ice. And as I was driving along after one of my breaks that a helicopter didn't interrupt, all of a sudden, I got that little prickly feeling on the back of my neck. You know the one I mean? Where you're going, I don't really know what's going on, but something isn't feeling right. And the little hairs on the back of my neck started to stand up, and pretty soon the hairs on my arm were standing out, and I was completely freaked out. And so I shut the lights off so I could take a look around, thinking, well, you know, maybe a fox or a wolf is following me. And look around, and I couldn't see anything. I had about another 6 hours to go, so flipped the lights back on and continued on my way. This feeling didn't leave. In fact, it got worse. Pretty soon, all the little hairs on my legs were standing out. I was completely alone and totally terrified. I pulled into the camp and stayed the night. Now, it was kind of funny because I was carried a sign that said Bob. And my sign that said Bob, I would put it on the bunkhouse because I traveled fully dressed with my Woods 5-star sleeping bag, because often I was the only woman for thousands of miles. And the bunkhouses were not segregated. They were just little old army cots, and so you'd go in and you'd flip open your sleeping bag and hop in and go to sleep. But I always had my Bob sign that said Babe on board. And they knew that if Bob was, the sign was there, that I had arrived. And so I put my Bob sign up and hopped into my sleeping bag and proceeded to go to sleep. I was having a pretty good sleep when all of a sudden there was this boom right by my head, and I jumped out of bed. And I ran to the window to see what was the matter. No, that's a different story. But I ran to the window and I looked out, and there is chaos, commotion. There was about 20 people in camp, and they all seemed to be running around going like, my gosh, what is going on? So I quickly put on my mucklucks and ran out and discovered that in the next trailer, the camp trailer, the bunkhouse trailer, 2 gentlemen had been leaving to go to the wash trailer. And one fellow had gone back to get his towel. And the other fellow had gone ahead. And a polar bear got him. And what I heard was the Inuit bear hunter in the camp shooting the polar bear right at the next trailer. You know it's going to be an interesting day when one of your co-workers gets eaten first thing in the morning and they shoot the bear. What they did is they started tracking this bear back, and they found that his tracks overlaid the tracks of my vehicle. Right back from the point where I'd stopped for a comfort break. See, polar bears are amazing. I have great respect for them. Apparently, he had smelled prey, because we're just a form of prey. We're just a source of protein to a polar bear. And he had followed my unit all the way up into the camp. I was devastated. I was guilty. I thought, my gosh, if I hadn't gone out for comfort break, or if I hadn't been making this run, this fellow would still be alive. Sometimes in life there's things that happen that just aren't your fault, but it's really hard to move ahead from. I continued hauling for the rest of the season, but the joy had left me. I knew it was time to move on to a different job. And so in the spring, which is June in the high Arctic, when the Mackenzie River started breaking up, I started looking for other opportunities. Now, these ice crystals are about 10 feet high. It looks just sort of like little shatter ice at the bottom of the Mackenzie. When 15 feet of ice go out, it is just amazing. Beautiful, beautiful thing to see. And so I did recruiting for the oil companies, and what I would do was fly around in the summer to the different camps and meet with the local people, because in order to get a drilling lease, the oil companies had to have a 60% Indigenous resident workforce. And so I would fly around and do some recruiting for them. As you come up to Tuktoyaktuk by air, you see what these are. These are called pingos. They're like pimples. They're like just giant pimples on the earth, and it's a big frost heave. And it's really, really cool, because some of the communities use them as community deep freezes. Now, here's the hint. If you're up there and somebody invites you to the community deep freeze, don't go, because it's really scary what they keep in the community deep freeze. Midnight. The sun is high in the air, and the reason that you can tell it's midnight as opposed to noon is the color of the air changes. It's sort of bluish at lunchtime, and it's golden at midnight. And so those of you that like to stay out late, when you get ready to go home, you put your sunglasses on, because it's really darn bright at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I had the opportunity to drive down the Dempster Highway, which was beautiful, and I arrived in Lethbridge. So that's a little bit about some of my northern journey. And I didn't realize how much I missed the north. I was there for 6 years, and it just totally gets into your blood. Well, this spring, I was invited to speak over in Rankin Inlet, and they said, "Have you ever been north?" I said, "Yes." And so I showed them this map, that the star on the bottom is Lethbridge, where we are right now. The star up at the top is Inuvik, where I was, and Rankin Inlet is over there on the Hudson's Bay. I says, really, quite honestly, you're the south north. You're just really not that far north. But Rankin is a really interesting place. It is the only community I've been in where the runway for the airport is longer than the town. It is the only town I've been in that has a stunning community Inukshuk. It is the only town that I've been in that Jordan Tutu from the NHL is their community son. And it's the only community I've ever been in where it's $22 for 3 liters of apple juice. I had some other slides of craft dinner and toilet paper, and that also is just as exorbitant. Bilingual stop signs. And what I really loved is that when I was flying up there on First Air, they have an elders first policy. It's not announced. People just step back and they respect the elders. And I thought, I like a society like that. So while I was up there, I got to meet a lot of very interesting people. And one of the coolest people I met was an Inuit elder by the name of Ida. Ida was amazing, and I've told a little bit of her story on the back of the handout. But Ida was precious, and for whatever reason, she seemed to want to take me under her wing. And so she would teach me the arts and the crafts and the way of life. And she was a marvelous storyteller. You see, her family had been there forever. And they knew that one of the biggest dangers was going out on the land and getting lost. Because you can't use a GPS because of the magnetic North Pole. They don't have AMA up there. You know, you would just go out and you could get lost and either perish through predators or through exposure. And so the Inuit developed a way of communicating over thousands of miles. They created Inuksuks. Now, some of us might be familiar with the Nukshuks in the human form and the Vancouver Olympics and everything. That's just one style. There's over 600 different ways to pile up the rocks to communicate. There's an amazing legend of a young fellow in the eastern Arctic that went over 3,200 kilometers based on a song, a legend from his grandfather. And he went from Inukshuk to Inukshuk to Inukshuk. This one warned of danger. This one said, here's a spiritual place. This one said, here's some good water and a good place to camp. This one said, go north, young man. So these Inukshuks were talking to him, communicating the whole way. And I was fascinated. Well, Ida took me under her wing and she started telling me some of these stories and legends. And she started to tell me about Inukshuks and how important they are. Not as just communication, but as a way of life. And so she tried to teach me how to build them. It's not easy. Now, I've seen some people around here, they've got Inukshuks in their front garden. I suspect that you've used cement caulking to hold them together, but I'm not telling you. But Ida and I would spend hours, and we would gather the rocks, and we would stack them up, and mine would fall down, and hers would be good. And I'd gather more rocks and pile them up, and mine would fall down, and hers would be good. But all the time, she'd be talking to me and saying, you know, Freddie, when you pick your rocks, you've got to pick them with care. Don't just go for the pretty ones. Don't just go for the big ones. You have to go for the rocks that are going to fit the figure. But she always told me that the most important stone was that stone that was on the very top, the headstone. Because you see, whether you're near or whether you're far, that stone shows the character of the figure. And so the spirit or character stone was very, very important. Well, the day came for me to move to southern Alberta. And so I was getting packed up and getting ready to go, and friends were coming to say goodbye. And I was really quite sad because I'd met some wonderful people and had some very great friends. But then Ida came along. And she was shuffling along in her mucklucks. And she had her parka on because they wear parkies winter and summer. And she came up and she just took her weather-beaten hands and reached out and held mine. She says, Freddie, I have a gift for you. Well, Ida knew that I didn't need another pair of beaded mitts or moccasins, and I didn't need any fur cushions or carvings or anything. So when she reached out and took my hands and said, I have a gift for you, I knew it was going to be special. She says, Freddie, I gift to you the story of the Inukshuk. When you go south, you need to build a new life. You need to build a new Inukshuk that represents your life. An Inukshuk of the friends that you're going to meet. With that, she kissed me on the cheek. I went back down the dusty road, never looking back. And I proceeded to leave town. Well, driving down the Dempster Highway was really interesting because it had just been opened. And they said you always have to travel with at least 5 spare tires because you're going to have blowouts. I was lucky, I beat the odds, I only had 3. But it took 11 days to drive from Inuvik. This is day and night driving all the way down to southern Alberta. Well, you see, I'd only been here once before. I had flown in on a February day for a job interview and flown out the same day. And when I flew in that February day, I arrived in my mucklucks, my snow pants, and my parka because you see, where I'd come from, we had a blizzard blowing in, it was more than 40 below. I arrived in Lethbridge and it was perfect. No wind, no snow, plus 17. People are in shorts and t-shirts. I'm just a little overdressed. Had my job interview and flew home. When I arrived the following August, It was blowing 147 miles an hour. Combines were flying through the air. We had to tie the children down, for goodness sakes. And I knew no one. The person that had hired me had even moved on. I knew no one. There was my son and myself, and that's it. You know, sometimes it's hard to get into a new community, especially one that's really established, where people have their friends and their circles and everything already set up. Smart people move to where there's communities where they know people or have family or something. But when I got here, I knew no one. And I was really quite sad. So I'd go to work and nobody would talk to me because I was a new kid, and I'd go back home. And my son was having the same experience at school. You know, when he started school, he'd go off to school and he'd come home in tears and he'd say, nobody talks to me because I'm a new kid. And this went on for a time, and one Saturday I said, let's get some rocks and let's build an inukshuk in our front garden. Right on. So we did. We went down to the river bottom and we gathered up the rocks. We came home and we built this inukshuk, and we were just really happy. We thought, yes, there's a little piece of home for us. He went to school, I went to work. The next day he came back and somebody kicked him over. I thought, wow, that's pretty sad. But then in the back of my mind, Ida's voice started. She says, build an inukshuk of your friends. And that was when I grasped the meaning of her gift. It wasn't go and find some stones and pile them up so somebody can kick them over. No, build your life with purpose. And you see, this is something that each and every one of us can do. We can build our life with purpose. And so when I took Ida's words and made them start to become real for myself, I thought, yes, I'm going to do that. And so I started with the neighborhood. And so the first rock that I decided on was my next door neighbor. My next door neighbor. Neighbors are fabulous. They are precious. She was one of these women, the coffee pot was always on, the door was always open, my son was always welcome to come and play with her kids. And she was just so warm and loving. She invited me to their family gatherings. And one day when it came time for me to move out of the neighborhood, she came and helped me pack. Now, just as a side note, both of my feet were broken and I was crawling on my hands and knees, so it was really hard to pack. But she came and helped me. And what she did is she took all my stuff, put it in boxes, and then she typed lists and what was in it and taped it to the outside. I wouldn't do that for me. My amazing neighbor did. She's absolutely fabulous. When my son got married, she insisted on making the wedding cake. And so when you think about starting to build an inukshuk out of the lives of the people that touch you, my neighbor Mush is the very first one I think about. Well, I also had a job, and it was hard, really hard, going into the office with strangers. It was a big office. It was a new function. It was doing things that I hadn't really done that before. And my coworkers didn't quite know what to do with me because they never had anybody transfer in from somewhere else. So I was definitely a foreigner to them. And quite honestly, some people were not that kind. And I would go home in despair thinking, what have I done? I should just pack up and go back north. But then there was one lady named Hannah. She took a look around and she says, you know what, I really can't stand how these people are treating you. So she set out to become my friend. She'd invite me for coffee. Sometimes we'd have lunch together. She'd invite me over to, you know, the girls' parties, you know, the candle parties, the cooking-ware parties. And she was absolutely amazing. And we were so privileged. We got to work together for years and years and years. And today, we are still such wonderful, wonderful friends. I had another friend that was also new at the same time I was, but she had the advantage. She was from Lethbridge. In fact, she'd been born in a museum. And you know, in Lethbridge, if you've been born in the museum, like, you're real. Well, she was real. But she was new also, and she was having some struggles. So the two of us would go over to Henderson Park at lunchtime and just sit on the swings and talk. And Sandy was just so good to me. It was just such a blessing. So think about your workplace. When new people come, whether they're people you already know, or they're from away, or they're from far away, how are they greeted and treated? Those first few days, heck, those first few hours are so critical for new employees. And I just encourage you, be kind, be open, be warm, be gracious. There's always a social aspect of our lives. And I'm no different than you. I enjoy having a social aspect to my life. You know, sometimes, you know those kids that your parents say, don't play with that kid because they're bad? Somehow I seem to attract those people. I'm not really sure why, but I just sort of seem to attract those people. But I had this amazing friend, and I got to know her. She worked for the city of Lethbridge, and I got to sort of know her in a social setting, and she and I had fun. We were breaking the fun barrier. In fact, how many of you have ever belonged to a liver lovers club? This isn't a gathering of the liver lovers club, I take it. Well, Jan and I started a liver lovers club, and this was awesome because we would have themes, and once a year we would have the big liver lovers party. And we would have a theme. One year it was black and white, and we did Mexican. Mexican liver is really bad. So if you don't like regular liver, you are not going to like it in a taco, I can tell you. We did Italian liver, and that was not much better. But one day we decided that we're going to go all out. We are going to have the formal liver event. And so of course what we did is we started writing out the invitations, and we sent them out to people. And we knew that if we sent you an invitation and you responded, yes, I would be delighted to attend, that you were going to be there. And if you said, no, I send my regrets, we respected that. But if you said, yes, I'm going to come, and then you didn't show up, we knew that it was an oversight on your part, and so we would carefully package up your portion of liver in a little baggie, and we would slip it into your mailbox because, of course, we wanted to include you. And so this particular year, we were doing the formal liver event. And we were cooking, we had the little liver hors d'oeuvres on little sprigs of rosemary. It's like LA chefs had catered it, for crying out loud. It was amazing. And the finale was going to be the big bombastic dessert. Well, what do you do with liver for dessert? Well, I found a mousse recipe, and I thought, well, mousse. You just substitute the pineapple or liver for pineapple. Right, so that's what I did. We ground it up and we made this mousse. And then we were going to flambe it. You know, like they do on the cruise ships when the penguins come along, and we thought that would just be awesome. So that's what we did. And we had the dinner, and it was going swimmingly. People were enjoying adult cocktails, and they were, indulging in the different little liver dishes that we had. And then came the moment for dessert. Well, I had all of my equipment laid out with surgical precision. I had the mousse, and it was coated with meringue, and I had the brandy, and I had the lighter, and I was just ready to go. So I took the brandy, and I drizzled it beautifully over every part of that dessert. Grabbed the lighter, my friend dimmed the lights, and I walked into the dining room, and I touched the lighter, and it went poof. Well, it scared me. And I jumped and I dropped the thing, and there was flames everywhere. And this stuff is sticky. My dress was on fire, the curtains were on fire, the rug was a mess, and all we could do was laugh. We said, well, what had happened is that some adventuresome guest had decided to replace the brandy with Everclear. Some of you apparently know what Everclear is. It's about 180 proof, and the minute you get a match, it just explodes. And it burns with that blue flame you can't really see. That's what happened to the curtains. But that's another story. But social friends are so important. There's a bunch of women that I hang out with. We call ourselves the girlfriends. And, we go out for dinner, we can go out for coffee, 1, 2, or all 5 of us. We travel together. Social friends are absolutely critical and important. And when I think about My social friends, they're definitely very much a part of my Inukshuk of life. Well, what about business? Many of us here are in business, and business is important, and it's good to have business relationships. So whether it's through sitting on the board of an organization like this, Chamber of Commerce, different, environments, memberships and associations. I belong to the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, and I know for a fact that if something happened and I wasn't able to make it to an event, I'd call one of my professional friends and they'd help me out as I would for them. I was in Slave Lake until yesterday. I got home yesterday from Slave Lake, and if I couldn't have made it, Melody, I'd have found somebody for you. And so having business friends and acquaintances that you can truly count on and they can count on you is very much a significant part of the figure of your life. What about our community? We have an amazing community here in Lethbridge. We've got fabulous citizens, we've got great organizations. And when you take a look out in the community, there's lots of opportunities to volunteer. You can volunteer for the board here. There's so many opportunities. I'm privileged to be involved with a number of things, but I have to say the proudest part of my community involvement is through Toastmasters. You may not know, but Lethbridge is the home to one of the most amazing Toastmaster clubs in North America. It's called Naturally Speaking. This Toastmasters Club is made up of individuals with developmental disabilities. They are amazing, they're encouraging, they're supportive, they are the best club. In fact, they're the biggest club in Southern Alberta. They're hosted out of Ability Resource Center. They've got staff as members and the participants. They're great. And these people come back and say, now I'm finding my voice. One lady's goal was to be able to advocate for herself. I was privileged to be part of the group that got this going. And it was neat because every Wednesday at lunchtime, we would take our little Toastmaster bags and we'd go over to the Ability Resource Center and we would walk into the green room and get set up. And the participants would come with their little bag lunches and we'd sit and have a lunch meeting. And it was really, really interesting because you never really quite knew what was going to happen next, but it was always an amazing meeting. But there was one gentleman that worked in the sheltered workshop that the staff had never heard speak. But he would come to our Toastmasters meetings and he would sit there and he would eat his lunch and then he would go away. About 5 months after we'd been showing up every Wednesday, one day as we were coming trucking through their workshop on the way to the green room with our Toastmaster bags, he jumps up and he goes, "Toastmasters!" The first word they'd ever heard him speak. The power of communication, the power of the word. So what community organizations are you part of? What impact can you have? Something like Toastmasters is an international organization, but there's many other really, really good organizations that you can be part of. Well, no figure of your life will be complete without family. And Ida always used a big, long rock or a couple of slabs of rock to donate, to show the arms for family. Well, what's family? It has so many different dimensions. But really, if you look at family, it's the past, it's the present, and it's the future. So what is the past? Well, this is your history, your individual history. For Ida, it was the years and years and years of living and surviving on the land that allowed her to teach me these things. For me, my history was the grandparents that I knew and loved. My grandmother came as a war bride, and I know some of you are related to war brides. When she came, she left friends and family and everything to come to a new land. The present, this is who we are today. Your brothers, sisters, people that you like to include as if they were brothers and sisters. I was an adopted child. I was 3 weeks old when I was adopted. and raised in a really remarkable family that allowed me to be a rodeo participant, a 4-H kid, and all of this stuff. And it was just before my 40th birthday that I got a phone call. You know, one of those days when you're rushing home from work and nothing has gone right, you've got bags and purses and the phone's ringing as you walk in the door. Well, you drop everything and you run to the phone and this lady says, "May I speak with Freddie, please?" And I says, "Yes, this is Freddie." She says, "Are you sure?" Yep, I checked and it was me. And she says, "Well, I really need to speak with Freddie." And I'm thinking, this is a really annoying telemarketer. And I was about to hang up the phone when she said, "I'm calling from the British Columbia Adoption Reunification Program, and I need to make sure that I'm speaking to Freddie." Oh, bus, she said, sitting. Well, we had a conversation, and it turned out that as the books were being opened, my birth mother had registered and was looking to connect. To make a long story short, my birth parents got married shortly after I was born. And they're married to this day. I like to say I was only 14 months premature. So family can take so many dimensions. But then what about the future? Looking around, I know some of you have children and grandchildren. Children are great, but those grandkids, when you know that the gene pool has just got another layer deeper, isn't that awesome? What kind of legacy? What kind of legends? What kind of stories are you passing along? Do you talk about where you came from? Do you talk about some of your challenges? Do you talk about where you're going? Family doesn't have to be by blood or by birth. Family can be by collection and accumulation. But always, always, it's such an important and vital part of your inukshuk. Well, are there other elements in our lives? Absolutely. There's transitory friends. You know, you go to a conference and you really hit it off with somebody. You go like, "Oh, we'll email, we'll write." You go home and you forget. Or somebody moves in and you're really, really close, great friends, and then they move away. "Yes, we'll stay in touch. We'll visit in the summer." But you don't. You see, friends come and friends go. Relationships morph and change as we need them in our lives. But Ida always said that the most important stone in the inukshuk was the headstone, the character, the spirit. Who you are, what you believe, how you live your life is shown in your head, in your face. Who are you as a person? You see, this is the stone that goes on top to finish your figure. Because you see, from near or from far, people can see your character. As I started to collect the inukshuk pieces from my friends and relationships, Ida became so very, very real to me. Now, sadly, I'll never see my friend Ida again because she perished in a house fire a few years after I'd left the North. But here's the beautiful thing. She gifted me with her stories. She gifted me with her friendship. She blessed me with the legend of the inukshuk and the ability to rebuild my life wherever I go. I take Ida's gift and I pass it to each and every one of you. Do you know people at work, people in your neighborhood, people in business, community organizations? What about that family? And who are you as a person? You know, this afternoon I was taking a look at Lethbridge Family Services, and really I think, Melody, that you as an organization have an incredible inukshuk. When you take a look at the neighborhood, you've got 5,500 clients and workers. That's a big neighborhood. Even by Calgary standards, that's a big neighborhood. And so you've got these 5,500 people that you're reaching out and touching. Co-workers. You know, some of them were here tonight. It's great. Thank you for being here. Did you know that you are the 16th largest employer in the city of Lethbridge? You're the 3rd largest charity next to the college and the university. I never really thought of them as charities, but hey, who might argue with statistics? I mean, you are a wonderful presence in our community, and each one of you is making a difference, and we thank you for that. Social. Well, if we take a look at the social rock, the staff and the clients are involved in just about every single social avenue in the community that you could possibly think of. What great impact. Business. Well, you're a not-for-profit, and I know that you get a lot of your funding from government. I spent a lot of years working for government, and I know that that is not stable funding, unfortunately. So when you only have 5% or 6% or 10% as donations, I look around and think, what a great opportunity to truly make a difference in the community by supporting personally or corporately an organization such as this, when you're looking at a presence of 5,500 people that you can reach out and touch. Wow, what an opportunity. The community. I met with Melody and I was surprised. I knew a little bit about Lethbridge Family Services because I'd done some work in association with DeCapo years ago. But immigrants and new Canadians are some of the people that you serve. Persons with disabilities, dear to my heart. Seniors, youth at risk, home care, victims of trauma, support for all types of families. I just can't imagine how large the arms would have to be for your Inukshuk. And the character. You know, this is an organization that has a spirit of grace, giving, love, and support. We're so fortunate to have Lethbridge Family Services here. But let me challenge you. You see, each one of you, as you walked in today, you had an Inukshuk. Each one of you walked in with a handful of stones, and there's stones on the table that you're welcome to pick up and touch and to take with you. And so my question to you is, what are you going to do with your stones? Well, you can take them and throw them aside. You can do that. Or you can take them and treasure them and nurture them and build relationships in your neighborhood, at work, in your community, with organizations, within your family. And you can take these stones and you can build your Inukshuk of life as you foster and revere and nurture these relationships. I do this for Ida.
Oh, Freddie, I think for once you've left me a little bit speechless there, which doesn't happen very often. I'm a little bit emotional. As we've just heard from Freddie, it takes a strong individual and a whole bunch of partners to build a community that is inclusive, diverse, strong, and welcoming. To continue on in this spirit of partnership, I'd now like to invite our board chair, Wendy Culkin, and CEO, Sandra Mintz, to the stage to help present our Friend of the Family Award to some recipients that we've worked with or that have been nominated that exemplify how businesses, individuals, and agencies can help families. For the first award, I'd like to ask Program Director of Immigrant Services, Sarah Amies, to come up and speak about our